Men are human beings. They're not robots. They're not machines programmed to do the bidding of their female operator. Men are human. They have their own dreams and goals and desires. That's okay. They're allowed to be people. For our daily cancellation today, we turn to a segment on Laura Ingraham's show featuring conservative commentator Tomi Lahren. A clip from this segment went viral over the weekend with Tomi doling out some tough talk for young men who she says are lazy and feminized. Tomi has been on this subject for a long time, and we'll have more on that in a minute. But let's start with this most recent segment. Here it is. Listen.
It's a major problem. And, you know, Speaker Johnson has been talking about those maybe deadbeat folks that are on Medicaid, and maybe some of those folks are the stay-at-home sons. We don't know. But I'll tell you this, leave it to Gen Z to rebrand laziness and social awkwardness as something cutesy, like a stay-at-home son. They did much the same thing with quiet quitting, where you can go to work and do less. And if you call it quiet quitting, it's somehow better. But Laura, I got to tell you, this is also a big problem when it comes to, I think, declining birth rates. People not getting married and having children. You know, that's a big problem. They blame it on women. Well, look at what young women have to choose from. The pickings are slim. Yes, we might have a feminism problem in America, but it's the feminization of men. There are a lot of young women out there that want to get married. They want to have kids. They want to have stable families. But there are a lot of young men out there who want to live in mama's basement and order DoorDash. And therein lies a big part of the problem.
So Tomi blames young men for the declining birth rates, saying that women want to get married and have children, but men would rather stay in mama's basement and order DoorDash. It's an interesting accusation coming from a 32-year-old woman who, as far as I know, doesn't have children. Her Wikipedia article, at least, mentions a chihuahua, but no human children. But in any case, Tomi, as I mentioned earlier, has been on this subject for a long time. She's spent the last several years blasting men for their incompetence and their insufficiency. In fact, the last time she was featured on the Daily Cancellation was 5 whole years ago when she said this.
Now, I've often talked about the vacation of America and how men are no longer men. I talk to my mom about this a lot, and she says, well, maybe it's just the guys in Texas. Maybe it's just the guys in Los Angeles. It is not just the guys in Los Angeles, Nashville, Dallas, and they're not any better in the Midwest. They, quite frankly, I think they're trash all over this country in the age range of about 20 to, I think, about 55, maybe even 60. A lot of men are trash. A lot of men don't know how to treat women. A lot of men don't know how to really, quite frankly, pull their heads out of the sand and pay attention.
A lot of men are trash, she said 5 years ago. Men are trash all over this country, was her exact quote. And that's the kind of statement that if I said that about women, I would be denounced by both sides as a radical misogynist and likely domestic abuser. It's the kind of statement that you cannot say about any broad demographic except men. I mean, imagine saying, you know, women are trash all over the country, or gays are trash all over the country, or black people are trash all over the country. Those are unacceptable statements in polite society, but a lot of men are trash all across the country, is commentary so acceptable and normalized that we hear it even from pundits on the right. But let's go back to what Tomi said not 5 years ago, but 5 days ago on Laura Ingraham's show. Again, she said, quote, young women want families, too many young men want DoorDash and mama's basement. Now let's leave aside how insulting and dismissive this statement is. The much greater problem is that it's just simply inaccurate. In fact, polls have consistently shown for years now that young men are significantly more likely to desire family life than young women. There are more young men who want to start families than there are young women who want to start families. And these are not like the findings of Andrew Tate or the red pill YouTuber, you know, but of research firms like the Pew Research Center. Okay? In other words, these are findings from organizations that are don't have an anti-feminist bias. Let's put it that way. And according to a recent Pew study, 57% of men between the ages of 18 and 34 want to be parents someday. For women in the same age bracket, the number is only 45%. So yes, less than half of young women want to be mothers, as opposed to nearly 60% of young men who want to be fathers. And this is not just Pew Research Center claiming this. Multiple polls over the past 2 decades and across the world have found that young men are more likely to want children than young women. There was even a poll done in Nigeria a couple of years ago that found the same kind of gender gap. So this is a very consistent finding, which means that there just isn't any evidence to support Tomi's claim. In fact, the data tells us that it's young women who, more often, would prefer DoorDash and mama's basement. And it's not just that women don't want kids. Reading now from a New York Post report from April, quote, women have certainly come a long way, no longer feeling the need to put a ring on it due to social or cultural pressures. It turns out U.S. women are ditching the traditional idea of marriage and instead choosing to live their best single lives. And the proof is in the data. According to a 2023 Pew Research survey, almost half of U.S. women didn't view marriage as an important element of a fulfilling life. The percentage of women looking for romance is on a steep decline. According to a 2022 Pew survey, only 34% of single gals were looking for a serious romantic relationship, which is down from 38% in a 2019 survey. So not only are a majority of young women not looking to start families, the majority aren't looking for any kind of serious romantic relationship at all. That's what basically all of the studies and surveys tell us. Now, I'll be the first to say that most studies are fake, but in this case, they also line up with our anecdotal observations. For example, social media is full of videos of young women glamorizing single life. I mean, this is a whole genre of videos that we've played and talked about many times on the show. Here's just one recent example.
I never ended up with a good guy until I figured out how to truly love being single and doing things alone. I don't think we give enough credit to single women who love being single because there's still the whole childless cat lady trope out there. Like, you can enjoy life alone. You don't need somebody to bear witness to your joy to make it exist.
Well, actually, I have to tell you, you can't really enjoy life alone. You can't. You do need someone to bear witness to your joy to make it exist. Happiness is only real when shared, in the words of Christopher McCandless moments before he died alone in the Alaskan wilderness. If it were possible to be happy completely alone, then it would be possible to find people in solitary confinement who live in a state of total bliss. It'd be possible to be stranded on a deserted island alone for 10 years and actually enjoy the experience. But almost no human would or ever has found joy in such a state. And that's because we are human beings. We're not trees or spiders. We desire companionship, which is why these single women who are happy alone actually spend their whole lives searching for a way to replace the companionship of a man. That's why these single women still have one-night stands. It's why they become obsessed with their pets. It's why they go on podcasts to talk about how happy they are. It's why they post about it on social media. They are looking for human connection and validation and companionship in other forms, some form that will sufficiently replace the form of a man who loves them and is devoted to them. And they never find it. And so they are never really happy, no matter how desperately they claim otherwise. Now, women aren't the only ones giving up on marriage and family life, but they are giving up on it more often and in greater numbers. In fact, there is a distinct difference even between the young men who have given up on family life and the young women who have given up on family life. Like, even when you compare those two groups, the men and women who both say that they're not going to get married or have kids, there's still a difference. And the difference is this. The young men usually have given up on the idea of having a family despairingly because they think it's not an attainable goal. The young women give up on it happily because they think being childless is a path to personal empowerment and freedom. Privacy has become a luxury in this country, and that's honestly pretty messed up because here's the thing, you can't have real freedom without privacy. They go hand in hand. So who gets privacy? Not the regular, everyday person. The government hoards it in classified documents while they buy our personal data from brokers and track everything we do online. But here's what's interesting. There's actually a way to flip the script and take back some control. That's where ExpressVPN comes in. ExpressVPN creates a secure tunnel for all of your online activity through encrypted servers, so data brokers can't see what you're doing, which means their customers, government agencies, and big tech are left empty-handed. Here's the crazy part. In just the last year, ExpressVPN got over 400,000 requests for customers' data from tech companies and government agencies. How many times did they hand it over? 0. They can't share what they don't collect. I personally use ExpressVPN every time I travel for work. It gives me peace of mind knowing that my sensitive emails and financial information are safe, even on sketchy hotel or airport Wi-Fi. And it's simple to use. One click and you're protected on up to 8 devices, so your whole family can get their privacy back. Right now, you can get an extra 4 months for free when you use my special link. Go to expressvpn.com/Walsh. Get 4 extra months of ExpressVPN. That's expressvpn.com/Walsh. Now, in my pretty extensive experience talking to young men who plan to be alone and single forever, almost none of them are happy about it. I don't think I've ever heard any of them claim that they're empowered by this decision. They have resigned themselves to the fate because they believe, wrongly in my opinion, that they have no hope of ever winning the affection of a young woman who will love them and stay loyal to them for life. You know, I have no doubt that some young women have also given up on dating out of a similar sense of despair and hopelessness, but it seems much more common that they'll cast their decision as empowering and objectively good in and of itself. In other words, a man gives up on getting married and having kids because he feels like he has no choice. A woman gives up on it because she feels that giving up on it is the best choice. And I think both are wrong, but one is wrong for a worse reason. But this isn't just about pointing fingers and establishing who is more to blame for the problem. The point isn't even what Tomi said. It's what she didn't say and never says. It's what almost no conservative female pundit in the mainstream will say. Now, we've heard all of them scold young men. We've heard their tough talk and supposed tough love targeted at young men. We've heard that for years. Well, my question is, when will they start directing even an ounce of that criticism and that toughness towards young women? You know, I call young men out on this show all the time. I challenge young men to work harder, to improve themselves, to toughen up all the time. I talk about that all the time. Just ask a lot of the red pill YouTuber guys who don't like me for that reason. So I'm not afraid to do that. But why won't Tomi do the same for young women? Why won't any of these female pundits do that? Why don't we ever hear this kind of tough talk about, these women, they're just lazy. All they want to do is sit around. We never hear that from women about women. If women, they will only say it about men. Why won't they challenge young women to live up to their obligations? In fact, when pressed, Tomi won't admit that young women have any obligations at all in the first place. I want you to listen to this exchange on Piers Morgan between Andrew Wilson and Tomi Lahren. This was a couple of months ago. This was I thought it was a very revealing exchange. Let's watch it.
Women on the right, covert feminists on the right, are constantly and consistently talking about how they need to have privilege in society. I want men. Their version of masculinity is men who take care of us, men who protect us, men who do all of this. Those are all duties that men have towards women. Great. What are the duties that women have towards men? What are the duties that women have towards anything? What do men get out of this arrangement? What are we getting out of this arrangement? Can you tell me?
I mean,
well, I would argue that men innately should be protectors and providers.
Hang on one second. Let Tomi
respond. Most men are born that way.
Let Tomi respond to that, and then I'll come to you, Jez. And then Sean, you've been waiting patiently. So
most men are born to be protectors and providers. I can't imagine my dad saying, you know what, to my mom, you know what, I'm not going to be a protector and a provider unless you do this. That's not how real men operate. Real men are protectors and providers, and they marry women who hopefully have some virtue, but also bring a lot to the table as well, that are great mothers, great wives, caretakers of the home. There's nothing wrong with being a traditional wife and mother. You're misunderstanding me if you think that I think that women should just be out doing whatever they want. I think that there are gender roles that should be respected. But I don't think a man needs to get something out of it to be a manly man, a protector and a provider. If you think you need to get something out of it, I quite frankly don't consider you a real man.
Now, Andrew asked a very reasonable, important question. What are the duties that women have towards men? Tomi, who talks a lot about the duties men have towards women, could not list even one duty that goes the other way. She says men have the duty to be protectors and providers. I agree, by the way. I say that all the time. You're not going to find anyone who agrees more with that, or you're going to find very few conservative pundit types who, I can't believe I just called myself a pundit, who talk about that more often. But, okay, so men, that's the obligation that men have to women. What obligations do women have to men? She could not provide even one obligation that women have towards men. Instead, she says that a man who expects to get something out of a relationship with a woman is not a real man, which means that in Tomi's world, no man in history has ever been a real man. Because, of course, every man hopes to get something out of his relationship with a woman. Men are human beings. They're not robots. They're not machines programmed to do the bidding of their female operators. Men are human. They have their own dreams and goals and desires. That's okay. They're allowed to be people, aren't they? In fact, women who are in relationships should want that. Like, I can't imagine how it would make my wife feel if I said, I don't really get anything out of this. It's not for me, though. I don't get anything out of this. That's insane. That's an insane attitude. Of course I should get something out of my relationship with my wife, and she should get something out of it too. If either of us can look at it and say, we're not getting anything out of this, then like something has gone massively wrong here. The fact that it's apparently shameful for a man to want anything out of a relationship at all, the fact that he could be shamed for expecting anything out of his girlfriend or wife at all of any kind, should tell you everything you need to know. The fact that he is supposed to have only obligations that go one way in the relationship and there's none that go back the other way, that should tell you something. And most of all, it tells you that feminism has seeped into the very core of our culture so deeply and so thoroughly that many conservatives harbor radically, insanely feminist beliefs without even knowing it. So this is my challenge to people like Tomi. You've lectured men enough. We've all heard the speech. Some of what you say about men has a degree of validity. Some is kind of bitter and resentful and doesn't have a lot of value. But what would have a lot of value is if you would, just once, deliver one of these harsh, no-nonsense speeches to the statistical majority of young women who have no desire to have children and become mothers and do their part to continue the human race. A lot of young women have never been told by anyone that they have any obligations or responsibilities of any kind. The very concept of responsibility is foreign to them. Certainly the concept of having responsibilities to men is not only foreign to a lot of young women, but anathema. Okay, there is not a young man who exists in the country who has not been told many times about the obligations he has to women. But there are many young women, millions, almost all of them, have never been told, ever, that they have any obligations to men. I mean, if they were told that, it would be like, it's heresy. It's blasphemy against what Katy Perry would call the divine feminine. I still don't know what that is, but, I guess it's blasphemy against that. Now, I don't know if those young women are eating DoorDash or not. I don't know if they live in their mother's basement or if they live somewhere else, but I do know that they exist. And there's a lot of them. And in fact, Tomi, it seems, is one of them. So I think she should focus on fixing that problem before she tries to fix men. And that is why Tomi Lahren is today, sadly, canceled. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.